Hey, welcome to another episode of MYD Global. Today you're going to hear from Christine Maligec. She's the actual fourth-term president for NARAMS, which is the Northern Alberta Risk and Insurance Management Society. She's going to talk to us about some of the key risks she's seeing communities deal with these days, as well as some of the things that they're doing to mitigate. So stay tuned. You don't want to miss this episode.
How are you?
Good. Glad you could be with me today. So just wanted to have our viewers get to know you a little bit more. So tell us about your background.
So my name is Christine Maligec. I am currently the Director of Risk Management for the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, but I'm also the President of the Northern Alberta Risk and Insurance Management Society. We represent commercial insurance buyers from Red Deer North into the Northwest Territory, and we are a chapter of the Risk and Insurance Management Society. It is one of the only global risk and insurance management professional groups of its type, and we have a reach of probably about over 10,000 members from across the world.
Wow. So you're in that role. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the risks that you're seeing communities facing?
It's not uncommon for us to see some of the risks that you see in the media within our communities, kind of, again, from Red Deer North, from an NARAMS perspective. The Insurance Bureau of Canada, they typically will put out a study every year about the top catastrophic losses from across Canada. And at any given point in time, Alberta might have anywhere from 5 to 7 of those catastrophic losses on that list. So when we take a look at the highest insured losses, Fort McMurray, Slave Lake, the Southern Alberta floods, there's also a number of wind-related and hailstorms that are starting to make those lists. So from our perspective, some of the big things right now are catastrophic losses and having municipalities and businesses be a little bit more resilient to that. Also, as well, what we're typically seeing as well from a municipality perspective is funding challenges for resiliency. So we know that there's a challenge with trying to get new infrastructure globally. It's not anything that is specific to Alberta or any particular region in Canada, but this is the first year that the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report has actually added in the cost and the degrading infrastructure globally to that particular risk outlook.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, finding the money to pay for big projects to create a new piece of infrastructure is going to take a lot of time, but there's a lot of smaller things I think communities can do at this time to create resiliency. We can have a conversation about that too.
Yeah, no, that would be great, because one of the things that I'm finding when I'm talking to communities, when they get their insurance, and it's no different from an individual business or community level, you get basically to build back the same. And so there's that piece where you start thinking, but we need to build back better. We need to actually build more resilient. Is there much discussion in the circles that you're in about that kind of extra piece of where do we get the funds to build back more resilient?
Well, I'm very fortunate. The organization that I work for, the AUMA, does include some building back better provision, but other insurers are starting to include building back better provision, including disaster recovery programs, both provincially and federally. But the market as well is looking at other ways for municipalities to pay for bad days, also as well for businesses to pay for bad days. So typically we have traditional property policies, but the programs are starting to evolve to include things like parametric insurance. And so parametric insurance works slightly differently than just property insurance, where something bad happens, you respond to it, you fix it, you take all your receipts, you give it to the insurance company, and then they pay you based on what should be or should not be included. Parametric insurance just really responds to certain criteria for a bad day. They just hand the municipality or business a check, and they go about building back as they see fit. So the market is actually starting to adapt with new products, but those new products are still kind of in their evolutionary phase as well.
So the society that you're involved in, I think you said you're the fourth-term president of NARAM. Just curious, I know you guys organized a conference recently. Is there anything specific, any key takeaways that you had from that conference?
Absolutely. Our conference theme was transform, and we found that incredibly fitting for Edmonton and for Alberta, as well as Canada, but also our market as well. We see that the insurance market is tightening up a little bit. So there's still some capacity available for certain groups and classes that are looking to be insured. But what's starting to tighten up is the underwriting discipline. So underwriters really want to see a little bit more with respect to what are businesses or municipalities or post-secondaries doing with regards to resiliency, risk management. What are they doing to help prevent loss? So everything is really interconnected in that particular sense. They want to see a lot more activity in the risk management space. They want to see emergency plans. They want to see business continuity. They want to see disaster recovery plans. So these are things that I think maybe we did off the side of our desk before within our organizations, but I think we're going to have to be a little bit more thoughtful and a little bit more deliberate in these actions, both kind of in a municipal, but also in a business space as well.
Yeah, no, and I don't see any of this work going away anytime soon. If anything, we're going to see it more and more important, communities having to do this. And hopefully they'll, look at something like the work that you guys are doing and just adopt some of those best practices and start thinking ahead, because I think for far too long we've been not looking at this piece when we're planning. So are there any best resources, places people can look to find out either more about the organization, or any tools, any resources that you tend to think are really good resources?
From an environmental scanning perspective, there's a few things that I really like to look at. The World Economic Forum, every January, they put out a great global risk report. So, you can see what trends are starting to happen around the world, but kind of on a national and regional basis. The Insurance Bureau of Canada actually has a great set of tools that they developed out of the Southern Alberta floods that are meant to help small to medium-sized businesses recover. As you know and can appreciate, the messaging that we have for citizens and for businesses is to be prepared for 72 hours during a disaster. But what we know now is that 72 hours really isn't long enough. And part of that is having the conversation about really knowing what your supply chain looks like, knowing who your customers are, checking your insurance, making sure that you have emergency and expediting expenses, maybe that you take a look at business interruption insurance. If you don't have those things, make sure that you have a financial buffer to help you during those particular times of crisis. Also, the Risk and Insurance Management Society does have a great deal of resources in this particular space. But, just being really mindful, like if we're in a particular area like post-secondary and municipalities, the best way to be resilient is just being really mindful about the social determinants of health. Overall, if your business or your community or your post-secondary institution really is practicing doing all the right things from an enterprise risk perspective, your chances of being more resilient and surviving any sort of disruption to your operation is much more in your favor. So the more you practice particular emergency plans, like we're good at fire drills because we've been doing it since kindergarten, but we've never actually exercised a business continuity plan or disaster recovery plan or any other type of emergency plan within our organization. So I do really recommend that once you write these plans, try to see if they're actually operational and you can actually work them out.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Christine. Well, thank you so much. This has been some great information. I'll make sure and include some of those links that you talked about, some of those resources in the description of the video below. And thanks again. Is there anything last minute stuff, point you'd like to make, or we're good?
The last takeaway that I think I probably have is that, it is an iterative and a continuing process, and we should continue to not just, learn from our own mistakes, but learn from others as well. Be part of a group like yours, be part of a group like ours, connecting with others in the community and continue to learn. Always look for opportunities to learn from risk management in the news as well, and build your own resiliency using your networks and your learning.
Thank you very much, Christine. And so that wraps up another episode of MYD Global. And don't forget to subscribe, and in the interim, stay safe.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.